honest, what do you feel when you think of North Korea? Disgust? Anxiety? Ridicule? Hatred? Well, that's probably because you believe in pesky ideals like human rights or democracy or even, God forbid, freedom. To an aspiring authoritarian dictator, however, North Korea serves as the perfect example of how to run a country the right way. I mean, why would he feel anything other than awe-stricken respect for the most successful dictatorship in the modern world, laughing maniacally in the face of Western condemnation and sanctions for almost 80 years? What if I told you that a European country, now a proud member of NATO, used to be a worshipper and a literal copycat of North Korea? This is the European history that they want you to forget about. This is the unbelievable story of Romania. Our story begins with the Soviet Union and its forced proliferation of communism. Romania, like many other Eastern European countries, was forced to be a part of the anti-West communist bloc, regardless of whatever government they had beforehand. The new guy in charge was a dictator named Ihore Georgiadze, or however the hell it's pronounced, and he gleefully copied Stalin's policies like mass industrialization, merciless purges of the political opposition, and collective farming. He was a ruthless, dangerously radical communist, yes, but the main character of this story is his good old cellmate and second-in-command, Nicolae Ceaușescu. And wouldn't you know it, Ihore died of lung cancer in 1965, and Ceaușescu became the glorious God Emperor of the newest, freshest hell on earth. Don't get me wrong, Ihore was no saint, but Ceaușescu was an absolutely crazy nutjob that should have never been the head of a country. To be fair, Ceaușescu seemed to be doing a decent job in the beginning. Hell, the Western countries were even applauding him for distancing Romania from the Soviet Union. Yes, Romania was part of the Warsaw Pact, the anti-NATO alliance led by the Soviet Union, but Romania wasn't a fervent supporter by any means. In 1968, Czechoslovakia had a massive uprising for freedom and reforms and democracy called the Prague Springs, which wasn't very communist of them. The Soviet Union obviously wanted to nip this in the bud before other countries got any silly ideas, and so it invaded Czechoslovakia with 200,000 Warsaw Pact soldiers to stomp the shit out of this rebellion. Ceaușescu, however, refused to contribute any Romanian soldiers. No, he even flirted with China and Yugoslavia, both countries designated as the traitors of communism by the dreaded Soviet Union. So, of course, the Western countries loved Romania. The West was happy to funnel money and tech to Romania because, after all, Romania was considered a cool communist country. Backed by Western support, Romania was able to build a modern car company called Dacia, which was eventually sold to Renault in 1999. Romania's economy was also promising. It had a lot of oil, so this bankrolled Romania's pivot into the chemical and manufacturing industry. Romania was industrializing, exporting, and modernizing at a rapid pace, the next rising star of Europe, unlike most of the communist bloc. But remember, this is a dystopian story. Romania was completely fucked internally. You see, Romania had a population of only 20 million people, but there were 3 million surveillance devices installed. The Romanian secret police, the Securitate, was spying on the entire country. Romanians couldn't even speak freely in their own homes because everything was bugged. Ceaușescu, the ever-paranoid dictator, didn't even trust his own army. He instead gave all the good equipment and high salaries to the Securitate, essentially wielding the secret police like his own personal mercenaries. And believe me, he was super fucking paranoid. He made a law that required Romanians to register their typewriters every single year. Why? Well, each typewriter has slight, unique imperfections that essentially act as a fingerprint, and the Romanian government kept track of them all. This meant that they could track every single dank anti-government meme to its shit poster and disappear that fucker. The birth rate plummeted because people didn't want to spawn kids in such a dystopian world. How do you think Ceaușescu dealt with the problem of population collapse? Let me introduce you to Romania's legendary reproduction encouragement policies. All abortions and contraceptives were straight up banned. Women who didn't spawn at least 4 children would be taxed to hell and back. But the big question, did it work? I mean, I guess? There was an explosion of newborn babies, but pregnant women and infants also died at a higher rate than literally any other country in Europe. It was an overwhelming net positive, but Romania soon learned the hard way that more people aren't necessarily good for society. Parents would just throw babies into orphanages because they didn't even want that kid in the first place and certainly couldn't afford to feed it. The foster care system was completely overrun, and kids start to get fucked in the head from a very early age from neglect, abuse, and no education. These poor kids, with all the unnecessary and untreated trauma you could think of, eventually grew up to become adults, and it turns out that an entire generation of fucked up adults can do a lot of damage to society. You would never believe this, but Romania was actually blessed in terms of geography because of its fertile land and abundant oil. That's why people weren't starving and everything seemed fine in Romania during the 60s and 70s, despite Ceaușescu completely fucking his country's foundations. Remember, the West still loved their cool communist country Romania and kept chipping in. By the 80s, though, the entire Romanian economy was crumbling down. You see, Romania's manufactured goods were mediocre at best because all the innovators were disappeared by the secret police long ago. Romania couldn't sell its goods to the Soviets because, it's been antagonizing the shit out of them to be that cool communist country. Well, Romania couldn't sell its goods to the West either because the Romanian exports couldn't compete with the shiny Japanese or West German products. Well, shit, I guess that just leaves the third world, and good luck getting them to pay full price or, pay at all. Ceaușescu kept YOLOing the entire Romanian economy into heavy industry despite the fundamental issue of nobody wants to buy your stupid merch. Romania's economy completely went to shit. Romania's national debt ballooned to a staggering $24 billion, and yet Ceaușescu kept mass manufacturing his shitty merch, insisting that everything was fine. But something had to be done about the national debt, so Ceaușescu came up with another insane, brutal solution. He just banned all imports outright. Romania's fertile farmlands pumped out way too much wheat, but all Romanians only got 1 piece of bread a day. The rest? All sold to the highest bidder to pay off the national debt. The car factories kept pumping out cars, but Romanians were banned from driving. Period. No washers or fridges, of course, and heating was banned unless it got lower than -12 degrees Celsius or 10 degrees Fahrenheit because oil money can pay off debt. Now, for the big question. Did it work though? Fuck yes! Turns out you could solve national debt if you're willing to plunge your entire country back to the Stone Age for a decade. This legendary record of speed-running national debt is still unbroken to this day. Like minds think alike. I think we've established how nutty Ceaușescu was, and of course, his best friend was North Korea's first dictator, Kim Il-sung. Ceaușescu visited North Korea in 1971 and was completely mind-blown at this Asian cult of personality method of dictatorship. Hold on, the North Korean people actually loved being abused by their leader. What? Romania had to have this too. Ceaușescu started to call himself the genius of the Carpathians or the great conductor, insisting that he was the godly liberator of the Romanian people. Every Romanian was forced to hang a picture of Ceaușescu and his wife in every household. If you didn't go along with this nonsense, well, his secret police would find out and kindly re-educate you. Ceaușescu was determined to transform every aspect of Romania into North Korea. So, in 1977, there was this huge earthquake in the Romanian capital, Bucharest, which completely decimated the city. But Is this not the perfect opportunity to literally rebuild Bucharest from the rubble into a replica of the glorious North Korea? Kumsusan Palace of the Sun? Why not Bucharest Palace of the Parliament? The Pyongyang subway network? Why not the Bucharest subway? As you can imagine, the Romanian people were not happy with Ceaușescu giddily trying to remake North Korea on top of thousands of destroyed homes and buried bodies. The embers of revolutionary resentment started to glow. A week before Christmas in 1989, a small protest started to spiral out of control. Before Ceaușescu knew it, the flame of revolution became a full-blown inferno about to devour the capital. The military was called in to crush the rebellion, threatened to open fire even, but the protesters kept marching on. Hell, they even offered flowers and bread to the military instead of fighting. As I mentioned earlier, the military was pretty much always neglected because Ceaușescu only loved his secret police, the Securitate. The military had no reason to stay loyal to Ceaușescu. They certainly weren't going to fire upon their own people. No, the soldiers deployed to put down this protest just joined them instead. Ceaușescu hastily tries to quell the rebellion with a counter-protest on December 21st, but the people were beyond done with him at this point and literally boos him off stage. That's no way to treat a North Korean dictator. Ceaușescu orders everybody to go home, but there are just too many angry Romanians flooding the streets of Bucharest. Whatever's left of the military opens fire on the dissidents, chaos erupts, and the protesters barricade up in a hotel to fight until the end. The Minister of Defense, Vasile Milia, ekes out his last ounce of conscience to order his military to not fire upon the protesters under any circumstances, then just unalives himself with a pistol to let someone else deal with this mess. With nobody left to command the military, the chain of command completely disintegrates, and Romania is thrown into a state of literal anarchy. Despite Ceaușescu declaring martial law, nobody was there to enforce his useless orders. Romanian soldiers started to desert in droves on the night of December 22nd, all choosing to join the winning side of the rebellion. But what about Ceaușescu's precious secret police? Well, the Securitate chose the wrong side and decided to fight to the death in brutal urban warfare, but they lost. Ceaușescu can see now that it's over, and he's about to get lynched by his own people. The only thing left to do, really, is jump town with his wife in a helicopter. Perhaps his best friend, Mr. Kim, would take him in for old time's sake. Unfortunately for Ceaușescu, the helicopter pilot didn't like him much either, and just ditches him and his stupid wife on the side of the road. The once godly Ceaușescus are forced to hitchhike to safety in the very shitty cars of the scum citizens that they ruled over. Well, the car driver didn't like the Ceaușescus that much either, and snitches his whereabouts to the rebel authorities as soon as they get out of the car. The bloodthirsty rebels flock to the hideout, and that's the end of their attempt to go to North Korea before Daddy Kim could even do anything about it. On Christmas of 1989, everybody holds their breath in anticipation for the biggest event of modern Romanian history, the trial of Mr. and Mrs. Ceaușescu. The charges were, among others, undermining the national economy, subversion of state power, and, of course, good old genocide. The verdict? Guilty on all charges, and they were both sentenced to death by firing squad. Yes, this also includes his wife. People hated that nasty woman. She was incompetent as shit, but would take up positions of authority to abuse and annoy the hell out of everyone, from ordinary citizens to political figures. The Ceaușescus, of course, claimed bullshit and that this was a kangaroo court. And to be fair, it kinda was, but what'd you expect from a bunch of starving, furious rebels who overthrew a North Korea copycat? Normally, they would give a few executioners some fake bullets to ease their conscience or whatever, but none of that nonsense here. All 5 executioners were literally fighting each other to make sure that they got the real bullet. And, you see, there's really no time to waste because they're in the middle of a revolution, remember? The Ceaușescus were just hastily thrown against the wall and full auto down with over 100 AK-47 rounds by all 5 people. I really do mean hastily here. it only took them an hour and a half from trial start to boom boom time. Nicolae Ceaușescu's last words were, apparently, "Long live the Socialist Republic of Romania, independent and free." While his wife chose to go with the classier, "You motherfuckers." No, I'm not making that up. She really did say that. Was this a revolution or a coup? Romania today is still a mixed bag. On one hand, post-Ceaușescu Romania joined NATO and the EU to grow its economy and improve itself. However, the sketchy people hired into the government bureaucracy by Ceaușescu's were still there after he died, so corruption and weird civil liberty stuff is still running rampant in Romania, as evidenced by the whole Andrew Tate situation. The failure of Ceaușescu shows North Korea in a different light, doesn't it? I mean, they've been able to maintain and develop their dictatorship for 3 generations. Moral of the story: if you're gonna be evil, make sure you're competent enough to pull it off in the first place.